What's going on? So this is my oldest plane. These wings are at least 2 years old. Been flying in many demos and events and practice with the high-tech 961s. And yeah, I tell you guys these are incredible all the time, but it's totally true. And then I was just asked how the slop is in them. So I'm going to show you that right now. I need two hands. So the wifey is going to hold the camera, and I think she knows what to do there. And now I'm holding the top of the wing solid, and I'll start wiggling as hard as I can the surface, and if you zoom in, I think there's no, don't hit it, don't hit zoom, but just move over, because the audio changes. Yeah, you see there's just no play in the linkage, at all. Come up here, baby. And walk forward till we just get like a frame like that, and you can see there's just no play in them after 2 years. This might have been one of the first sets of 961s I got. Definitely was in the first batch, and yeah. Look, I got the poodle over here. That's the wifey's feet. That's the wifey hair. And yeah, they have no slop for the guy who was asking. And then for me, yeah, I can't believe it. They're just, no matter how many, the most flights I put on a plane with them is 350, and they're just like new in box when they're done. They're holding power throughout a 10-minute flight. That's what some of the other brand servos that claim some power, they don't hold it for the whole 10 minutes. But these hold it throughout the whole 10 minutes. The centering never changes, the slop never changes, the endpoints never change, the holding power never changes. And yeah, can't say enough about them. The 961s aren't as fast as the 951s, and I don't have a lot of concern for that. I fly the 961s well, but I have been flying the 951s on the recent planes, and it kind of is nice to have the quickness, but it's not like I fly that much better. I do notice they're a little quicker, which is nice, but that's about it for this segment. All right, out. What's going on, fellas? This is the new Skywing 330SX 104 inch, and yeah, it's a pretty simple Simon quick assembly. I don't think I'm doing any mods to anything, and I wanted to show you one of the reasons why on that. Oh, this is a great example. Okay, check this out. I'm a sidetrack. Back to the Extreme Flight Edge 540 that I got a couple years ago. Is that going to work with it tilted sideways? Okay, you could see what I did to the control horns here, and this is really nice. This is a plane I really have loved, so I'm glad to have done the extra work to it. But you'll see the original slots are this slot and that center slot. Those are the two slots that Extreme Flight had slotted in the plane. But when you really get into this geometry, like in a lot of my videos I discuss, and you really get into linearity, having this move the same distance each way, for the surface to move the same each way, then the control horn location gets to be a thing. And by moving this control horn, I reslotted this way towards the servo, and that moved this pivot point over. Not a ton, and it's not in the perfect position, but it's pretty good. And then I, in the process, got this extra width. And then with that extra width, I got a conical on each side here. So actually no binding even when the angles get more acute. So that brings us full circle to this plane and why I'm making this segment of this video. And this was mentioned, boy, can I talk in circles or what? This was mentioned by John Ducia of, it's called Apex. It's Jay Stucia's new airplane company. And from everything I understand, he's getting them made by Skywing. And so Skywing either got onto this the exact same time that Jay Stucia came to them, I don't know who, the chicken or the egg. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but either John and Jace talked to them and they realized that John and Jace had a good understanding of the linkage geometry on these wings, and got to them in time that they released it already on this new plane of theirs, or they were already onto it, and that's why it's on this new plane from Skywing, and they kind of ran it by John and Jace Ducia and said, do you agree? And John and Jace said, yeah, we do, because John shows it on the apex planes. So what is it? What is it is what I talk about forever. And what you can see here, if you have a ruler and you line it up with the edge of the servo body, so basically what we're talking is, because that servo could be tweaked around, is that in this particular case, and in most cases, that servo is lined up perpendicular with the hinge line. So guys love all that. We're all like kind of engineering types, we're kind of OCD, anal retentive, perfectionist, schism on the spectrum-y types. So that appeals to us. And a lot of guys love to see that, their servo arm comes over 1.5 inches. Then they love to see the control horn over 1.5 inches. And then that's all 90, 90, 90, everything perpendicular, 90. It really appeals to the square brain. And L7, L7 weenie. So put an L and a 7 together, you get a square. Okay. So, but when you start to understand this stuff, when you pay a little attention to it, really, because everybody's smart enough to figure it out, doesn't take a polymer chemist or a rocket scientist, you realize that, this arm that's on this servo that's going to go in here is swinging in a circle, and it's pushing this surface that is not going around in a circle with it, but it's barn dooring on a pivot. So, you get into some considerations on how to make that optimal. It's less than desirable right off the bat, which is why in our elevators and in some plane manufacturers, they take and turn this servo 90, and most of our elevators, we're doing that now too, on these Skywing Extreme Flight Pilot RC, AJ aircraft, etc., etc. Everything's linear, so there's nothing to worry about. But on most of the ailerons, for convenience, of setup, so you don't have to have a pocket and doors and screws, and even those sometimes come loose and all that stuff, and then the extra trouble putting it together, the convenience of putting them on top. And I like everything convenient on these planes. I'm so down with convenient, because I was just looking at I'm going in circles. The guy that bought my model power, he came out and we flew last week. I think it was Wednesday. And God, that thing is beyond beautiful. It's just a flat out gorgeous plane. And I, kind of get jealous for a second. And then I'm like, no, I don't want any of that. I like these, And then if you get a 40%, 170cc class or above, and it's super cool and everything, and you like the, it's so big and, presents so well and all that stuff. But, as good as even the top 10 elite pilots fly them, there's a reason they don't fly them when they're competing in freestyle. And if they're not quite as agile, they're not quite as good on the power to weight. They're very good, good enough for, a slouch like me. But these are better. They're easier. They're, smaller box, and more agile, for sure. And they're just, it's, you're not going to fight it being big and clumsy. So back full circle, this is all convenient. We want everything convenient like this. I do. And I think everybody, that seems to be what the hobby wants. It's what they sell the most of. So now all that, 6-7 minutes of scenery, to make these optimal, you really want this control horn. And I have reviews on this, and you can go to joehuntrc.com. I just put up a new site. I've had that domain forever and a site there, but I just made it fresh and new. Oh, I also got downinthedeck.com back after 20 years. I sold it 20 years ago, and I had a big reason to sell it, for financial reasons that was a high priority at the time. But not anymore. And So I've been looking for it for 20 years, making offers on it and everything, and it was never available. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't available a couple months ago, and then now popped up available. So I got it. And that's really some scenery now. But if you go to joehuntrc.com, you will see a review and it explains all this stuff. The reason I'm saying that was that review was over 20 years ago. And point being that once you figure out this radius thing and this how the geometry works with a circle trying to push a pivot point, then you're going to realize that through a series of considerations, you end up with having the horizontal location this way of this control horn also being kind of forced into a consideration as well. And so that's 8 minutes now to let you know that usually these are too far away from the side of the servo body, which would be this side of this ruler. And it makes it look real pretty at neutral, but it's not good where you need it, which is at the endpoints. And it not only that, but it gets into some, sketchy geometry that could actually, cause some failures. So the ideal place to have this, if you look back 22 years in my reviews, I'll talk about from the side of the servo body, all things being perpendicular with the hinge line, that, a 1/4 inch over to 3/8 inch over, that kind of distance is really optimal. Even if you use a 1 inch, where's my finger? 1 inch servo arm, 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, 1.75 2, depending on what surface you're working on and what you got to work with, height of your control horns, etc., etc., etc. That just works out to be a pretty ideal spot overall. And John Ducia and Jace Ducia, John posted that that's where they put theirs, and all these guys went, "Oh yeah, you don't know what you're doing." And I wrote, and this was months ago when they first started, and I went, finally, somebody who understands. So chicken and the egg, I don't know if Skywing figured it out, the Ducias figured it out, or they both figured it out at the same time, but that's how they're doing the apex planes now for Jace. That I think this is the only way they've done them for him. And it's also in their new Skywings. It's not in their previous Skywings, although they're not far off. They are not like this. So this is really ideal. This is the center of the pivot point is about 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the servo body. So that's a very ideal place to have it. Skywing, Apex, they understand that. The other manufacturers are not far off. Nobody's making a bad ARF these days. So they're not far off with what they're doing, but I keep using the word optimal lately because there's a place that's more optimal. Skywing has it in the optimal place. Plus, with their wider control horn truss, they allow for more of a pivot point without binding, without you having to do anything at all. You don't have to buy a hard to find specialty washer that improves it somewhat, but not completely. You don't have to take and make your own slots and your own double, I think you can see that, double bases, and get your conicals and all that kind of stuff. Theirs is pretty much good to go. So that's one thing I wanted to mention about the plane, because this is a thing with me. It has been a thing with me for like 25 years since I looked at it long enough to sort of figure out what was going on. And I think most guys don't. They want to go fly. Who doesn't? And so stoked that Skywing really gets this, and the Ducias do too with Apex. It's really cool. Not a big criticism of the other manufacturers that are just slightly off from it, but it's just more optimal this way. The big criticism for me for the other manufacturers is when they're narrow, like that, with that missing slot right there that I didn't use, and that your ball is tight there and can easily bind as the angle changes off the control horn. That is a criticism. I really do wish they'd get on that. It's very inconvenient that they don't. I have workarounds, but yeah, these modern planes are pretty darn good, so that's a big inconvenience. If they don't get the location horizontally quite right, I can live with that. I got workarounds if I need to, or I can live with it. I know how to limit it to where I'm not going to get into trouble with it. But point being, Skywing and Apex, they got it optimal. I'm just saying. If you want to bag, maybe I'll start a new segment. So that's pretty much everything I want to say about that. And yeah, we got 2 more segments for this video. Okay, out. Okay, another segment for this 4-part video is about Skywing. So I don't know that I'm going to keep buying Skywings. It's an interesting plane. In my narratives, my stories about how I view the hobby as the hobby turns, according to Joe. DOG Joe, again, back like the old days, DOD Joe, is that, I can get down on the deck stickers for all my planes now. It's so fucking cool. Cool. So anyway, Skywing, I have said through the years now, only 3, in the last 3 years, that I really think that everybody should be flying Skywing versus Extreme Flight. That should get the fanboys excited. And the reason I say that is, I think that the majority of the guys that I see around the country, you just go to a field, unless you go to a field that magically has 5 or 6 elite guys that just happen to be there, which is in 2 or 3, 4 or 5 fields throughout the country. You go to a normal field, there's no elite guys. There'll be a couple of good pilots, in terms of normal good, but they won't be even extraordinary at all, and nowhere near close to elite. But I see that in all the clubs I've gone to, that it's pretty much like that. It's pretty rare to find a club that even has a pretty darn good pilot. And none of them, are very rare to, like I said, 5 or 6 have an elite pilot. But yeah, so then the guys they want to get what, for the last 15 years, whatever, what Chase Usi is running, what Santi Perez is running, and all the top dogs, and so they'll get a plane that's more aggressive, and then, but I see these guys flying, and they're good, they're above average pilots. These, I'm not saying they're not. They're not your average circle flyers at all. These guys can hover. These guys can put on a demo. But they're not on an elite level, and they're not progressing. And they get stagnant, and they're flying planes that are so aggressive now that they really can't manage the plane unless they're being pretty safe, with what they do. And I've been saying this for 3 years. The Skywings are a little bit bigger wing area, stab area in the rear is bigger. They're lighter, and they're more forgiving. And I just keep contending that everybody I see, and that's a lot of people in a lot of clubs, I've been saying for 3 years, they should be flying the Skywings. They're going to progress faster, and the plane's going to be more forgiving. But yeah, but for me, I'm kind of, I'm trying to say too many things at once, but I have come to the point where I kind of only like Extreme Flight now. I got this, because it's a new model from Skywing, but I like the smaller tails, stabs in the Extreme Flights, and I like how aggressive they are now. I like to tumble a lot. I like to pop top a lot. I like to do my kind of, corkscrew turnaround maneuver that I do for end turnarounds and stuff. It's kind of a flip turn where the tail comes up and around and spins, breaks loose and rotates. So the Skywings, I have to really do it good to make it work. I got to really brake hard and do some things. It's so stable, so it feels very forgiving, and what it is, and so it's always wanting to fly out. So it gives you a lot of confidence and everything. I think it's what most people need, and there's not that many elite guys around. I mean, you see videos on the Facebook and stuff, and you think there's a lot of elite guys around, but I don't see them. So that's they're just posting. If all the other guys posted, you'd see. But there's 2 reasons I don't want to get any more Skywings, and one is I do like the tails better on Extreme Flight, And then the fact that the quality control for me on the last, I think, 3 Skywings has not been good, and there's no support, So on the last one I had was, I still have it. All the way, the whole plane's in the other garage, but is my most recent extra NG from Skywing at 104. The orange one, orange and blue, I think, and white. And I put up 20 flights on it. Now the one before I had, which is still flying, Louis is flying that one now. It's got, I think, 500 flights we've got on it now, maybe a little more than 500. It's really solid. It's like a 2.5-year-old plane, 2-year-old plane. And, there has been no structural issues with it or anything. And it's had a lot of hard flying on it. And the new one has only got 20 break-in flights, so I'm breaking in the motor. I'm not really pushing it that hard. And the hinges came out of the aileron only on one side. One side's got hard glue stuck in. The other side has bazooka bubble gum. I just took my thumbnail and I scraped it off all the hinges on the aileron because the aileron popped out. And then I couldn't pull the other side out because it was glued hard, but all the one side completely came out. And then I could just, like I said, take my thumbnail, and within like 5 minutes, I had scraped all the glue off of the face of both sides of all the hinges in the ailerons. And then I just glued them on with some Z-epoxy, and yeah, that stuff's absolutely bomb-proof. The whole plane will break, before that ever breaks. The hinges will all break at the pins, and everything will break before that comes out. But it's the same with the glue on the other side, but they misglued that. Then I've noticed on the last 2 or 3 or 4 of them that I don't know how they're not jigging the ailerons to the wings evenly, but I've had them be out from 1/8 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch out of misalignment. Aileron to hinge, or aileron to wing. And then I had trouble with the motor box on the 67-inch NG, which really flew good, but the motor box is just a mess on that thing. And even though I did mods to reinforce it, after I got a few flights on it, after 60 or 70 flights, that thing broke apart. So just not liking the quality control on Skywing, not liking the glue jobs, not liking the support. I was basically told to pound sand. It's only 20 flights. They go, well, yeah, it's only 20 flights, but you didn't just buy it 2 weeks ago. You bought it a couple months ago, and nobody does that. And I go, oh, no, you're wrong about that. Everybody does that. I bought this wire cutter, which I use to cut my ropes and rock climbing, but I also use it to cut the nylon mesh, polyester mesh, covers for the protective covers for the extensions, going over these carbon fiber ribs nowadays. So I bought one of these, had it for 2 years, and never used it. It was just new in box, and I went to turn it on and it didn't turn on. So I emailed the manufacturer and they go, oh yeah, no problem, we'll send you a new one, hope you like our support. So they understood that I had never used it. They had a 1-year warranty. It was already 2 years past. Still full warranty from them because I hadn't used it. They weren't just gonna leave me hanging. So actually, service for quite a few years now. Amazon, Home Depot. I think Home Depot might have started it. Of course, Nordstrom's had it forever. Nordstrom's had the philosophy since I was a kid that charge a fair price, make sure you're making a good profit, you have a good business model. And then give people like the greatest customer service and the greatest return policy. Like no questions asked, full return. And I could tell you stories about Nordstrom's, examples are just amazing with them. But what they understood was if you do that, then people will feel very comfortable purchasing, and they'll purchase way more because they know if they get that one that was the wrong deal, that they can get it returned. And so in the process of you selling so much more, you're going to make out way better, and then everybody started to catch on, Home Depot, Costco, like everybody just started going, no questions asked. Best Buy, it doesn't matter where you go anymore. it's been quite a few years now that people caught on to that. Like Nordstrom's was doing it decades ago, but the last 10 to even 20 years, everybody caught on to this. The marketing departments realize if you give good customer service, if you have no questions asked returns, people will buy so much more stuff because they end up getting too busy to take stuff back anyway, But radio control, it's always been brutally tough to get customer service since day one. For me, I've been doing it for 25 years, and it's always, there's nothing like it in the rest of the industries in the world where they treat you this badly. Like if you come from a normal world, it's a real shock to the system, and then of course you got all the fanboys and you got all the clubs, so you can't even really say anything. Like you're best off just to pay the piper. Like whatever happens, just pay the price, and just take it in the shorts, man, and move on. But DA had an amazing thing going for all those years. Dave Johnson he had that same philosophy, that Nordstrom philosophy. He goes, I'm just going to take care of everybody. I'm going to make sure everybody walks away happy on every deal. And I'll, make it up with my reputation and the quantity of sales and all that stuff. And I think they still want to do that, with Brian Gilmore. They still want to do that same thing. I think times have changed. Dynamics have changed a little bit. But I think he's making a hard effort to get that done and to give that great service and get the good turnaround times. High Tech's always been phenomenal with that. And, Joe Lewis over at he's the GP broker, for the U.S., and he's always done an amazing job of that. So there are places you can go, but then, for so many of them, it's just not, just no customer service. And of course, you can only do what you can afford. Like if you're struggling, you're not going to do a good job, And if you got money in the bank and all your bills are paid and the family's all fed and everything's going good, like I think my dad always used to say, well, if you can afford to. So, then you'll see some better service from these guys. But yeah, ZDZ takes the cake on all of it. Like Zero Support. That's why, they used to be quite popular even here in the States. And now you don't see anybody doing it. Nobody wants to broker it. Nobody wants to buy one and deal with it. It's horrible. And that is the best motor ever made. Like my ZDZ 180 that I bought 10 years ago, far and away the best motor I ever ran. And I had 42 flights on that thing that were it was like nothing else in the, it was like a freaking Ducati or something. Like it's insane how much different it is than all these other brands. But yeah, then the second something went wrong, I got the worst support going by the worst guy going, and that ended that little deal. Well, that put a horrible taste in my mouth, but I got the hobby for a few years, and I'm like the guy in Ice Age, that the sloth, I'm too lazy to hold a grudge. So I got back 3-4 years ago. I actually ordered the plane 4 or 5 years ago when I wasn't even flying. I ordered a model power, and he talked me into ZDZ again. And the same thing, I got videos on this you can go back and listen to, but I just got royally, fucked up the ass by those guys. So yeah, twice burned, shame on me. And yeah, bad support is really a bummer. And with all the support that I give the hobby and all the planes that I've had through here the last 3 years, I think it's pretty sad, that I can't get support. Like, to me, that means I can't even buy support. You can't even buy support in this hobby. You can't get it, and then if you try to buy it, you can't even buy it. You can't even pay for support. I don't have a pay for support plan. But all that, I doubt I'd ever buy a Skywing again. When they can't glue their stuff, they can't support their stuff, the broker doesn't support the stuff. And, I've gotten to the point where the maneuvers I like to do now are different than what I used to like to do, and I like to tumble. I like things to break loose. I like things to spin. I like it to not be flying, and be unforgiving, So everything works on an extreme flight for me. So that's kind of the thing. And now I've enjoyed the Skywing planes a ton and probably have more flights on them than Extreme Flight. And I have 3 existing Skywings and I love them and I plan on flying the crap out of them forever. And no shade on you if you have Skywing. You know, I just won't be buying them again because of the support deal and really the quality control. You know, they could have, you know, you got to give me something. You can't have bad quality control and bad support. You know, that's too much. So that's the longest one, long segment, 15 minutes, but I wanted to get that out. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the CARB on the DA120. Since I learned a little bit more about that, that'll be the next segment. All right, out. What's happening? Okay, I was going to flip the plane over to show you this, but I'll just kneel down. So when I was talking about this plane when I got it and throwing on this DA120, which sure is pretty, I was talking about, and for years now, if you go back through all my videos, I talk about how come these manufacturers are so lazy that they don't get a CARB OEM for them or get do the mods on the carbs themselves, you know, so that we don't have to do them. And one of the things I talked about was that goofy, and if you love it, then, you know, no shade on you, but that choke setup, you know, where you have the auto choke and auto unchoke. And I don't think that's for us. I don't think it was ever intended for us. And I always have to take the time to take it off. And yeah, then I always have to make an extension, which I have tons of videos on, where I have to extend the throttle arm so that I get more resolution on my throttle stick. And so this is stuff I always have to do, and I have made numerous videos going back 20 years, 25 years, where I say the manufacturers really should take care of this. I mean, they're selling us a weed whacker motor for a bunch of money, and they really should take care of us on things like that, to where we don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So I've made that complaint many times, and then I noticed and talked about when I got this engine just a couple weeks ago and put it on this plane, and I made a video that DA had taken all that silly auto choke, auto unchoke crap off there, and that they had this plate for atmospheric pressure, which becomes a problem. I'm trying to get down to where you can see those 2 holes for the atmospheric pressure on there, so that you don't, because the thing is there's turbulent air around here. It's coming through the cowl, and there's all kinds of turbulent air. It's coming through the inlets for the heads, and yeah, so that atmospheric pressure membrane, it's just going to be inconsistent. So the point being on all that is this has the extension, this has all that choke stuff removed, this has a plate that's designed for us with our turbulent air around the carb. We're not a chainsaw. We're not a chainsaw on any of these other things either. You know, all this for chainsaws. Like, chainsaw doesn't need resolution on the throttle. We do. Chainsaw can do the auto choke. Chainsaw doesn't have turbulent air. It's not flying, you know, 100 miles an hour like these things are, or 20 or 30 when we're going slow. So that's a very long story to tell you that DA didn't modify this carb. This is done for them by Walbro as an OEM carb for desert aircraft. So I did not know that. So they did what I've been saying in my videos for years is that these guys should do that, and they should have it done for them, or they should do it themselves in-house, you know, so that we don't have to do it. I included DA on that list every time, and I shouldn't have, because DA does in fact have their own carburetor OEM'd for them with all the mods that are for us, so that we don't have to do them. And you know, this plate also was their design with the 2 holes in the bottom for the atmospheric pressure. So kudos to DA, Desert Aircraft, Brian Gilmore on all that. And that's the final segment of this big talkie. Okay, out. You know, one more quick item. That says W1 for that control horn. That says W2 for that control horn, which they have traditionally always done. Same with the other manufacturers. And then they make the control horns different heights so that you can synchronize everything perfectly. And they do that because the aileron is thicker and the wing is thicker here, and the aileron is thinner down here. So to get the two servos to both have the servo arms traveling the equal distance with each other, you know, to be perfectly synced up, to make the surface go equal distances up and down, synced up, and have everything, again, we'll use the word optimal. You need these control horns to have those holes right there, the pivot point, so the center of that machine bolt needs to be the same distance from the center of that hinge line to the center of that bolt pivot point to over here when that's glued in, that is the same distance as that. It's an equal distance. You know, let's say this is 2 inches, just to go with a number. That from the hinge line center here to the bolt center here, once that thing's glued in, that should also be 2 inches. And that means that the one that's further away from the root is going to have to be taller to make up for the fact that the wing is thinner down there. So, yeah, that's typically done. This is the first plane that I've seen that's not from like a cheap brand or something, or like 30 years old, that is not different. So even though they still labeled these W1 and W2 like they used to, all the other Skywings I have, there are different lengths on the control horns. And you can see on here, it'll be like a W like this, or a W1, or it'll be a W with 1 notch, and then there'll be a set with a W with 2 notches. You know, and then one set will also be longer, you know, things like that to indicate W2. And then, you know, to put the longer one out there. Now, these are closer together now. I was showing you. They're not very far out on the tip, but there's still a big difference in the taper of the wing, and they're still not optimal. So they got the control horns location optimal. They got the control horn truss width optimal, and did a lot of nice things. But yeah, then they, you know, dropped the optimal situation with the heights of the control horns. So for me, that's a little bit of a letdown. For other people, it probably don't care as much. And like I was saying, the biggest thing with me on the Skywings is just the, you know, quality control, like having those hinge lines that, I mean, hinge sides, the whole side of the hinge that's glued in with some glue that either didn't have hardener, or was just the wrong glue, or was old glue. I don't even know what they did, but that glue you could just scrape off with your thumbnail. And things like, you know, on the last NG as well, there was just, the wings actually rattled, like the spars were not glued in, like the ribs, and that was weird. And the motor box, you know, on the 67 inches, and oh, and then, yeah, the jigging of the ailerons where they just don't line up, you know. Oops. Yeah, like this is all lined up, but there's been 2 of them now where they're not lined up. The aileron's not lined up with the wing, which is kind of amazing because you think this would all be jigged up. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, probably my last Skywing due to quality control, and then no support. You know, if they replaced the parts that were bad, that'd be different. So now I'm getting way sidetracked into other stuff because that's all in other parts of the video already. And this was just about the fact that I was, you know, a little bit let down. That, you know, that you can't, there's no way to synchronize these now, you know, 100% synchronized. They are not optimal because they made the control horns the same height. Yeah. So, yeah, the rest of them, that's for the other wing, you know. And, nope, that's elevator. Sorry. Where did I put them? But anyway, wherever they are, they're somewhere. But they, oh, they're already glued in. So, yeah, I took all 8 of these control horn trusses and, you know, bunched them all together, and they're all identical in size and size and detail in every way. None of them are longer or shorter than any of the rest. They're all just the same. So, a little bit of a letdown there. All right, out.